Well, hey, David, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for
So,
having me.
hey, Brian here with Computer Solutions. I'm once again in our beautiful San Antonio office off Wurzbach Parkway, and I'm talking today to David McCall, our cybersecurity product manager. And David enables us. He spends all of his day with customers, with clients, and also looking at tools, looking at practices, and then helping customers, et cetera. So David also enables the team, and he posted a really interesting some thoughts on why organizations don't go with an IR plan, which is really interesting in 2024. Every year for the last probably decade or more, cybersecurity incidents continue to happen at a faster clip, at a more expensive clip to everybody, right? Whether you're a small business, a large enterprise like an AT&T or of course, all the times they happen. I think I saw a statistic that said something like in 2025, the cost of cyber breaches is going to get up into the 9 trillion area. And so
It's amazing.
today, David and I were talking and really wanted to discuss why a company wouldn't get into an IR plan. Obviously, us being in the business, it's kind of out there why you wouldn't make that decision. But I do understand a little bit of it. And so, David, there's only a few, I think, major buckets that these reasons fall into. What are your thoughts on why they don't do that?
No, it's great. And again, as you mentioned, it's hard to imagine, but when you put yourself in the customer scenario, whether it's a big organization or an SMB, you start to empathize and understand why those reasons may be. One is that I think there is a misconception of that this is a complex implementation.
Sure.
When you think of an IR plan and you're staring at a blank sheet of paper, that's a daunting task.
Right.
And so you start to think of the steps. It's not your forte. You're a business owner, and you spend your day thinking how to create business. What's in an IR plan?
Right.
So so that's step one. I think you're just, it's so complex. Who do you turn to? And it gets that right there is like right in the first paragraph of an essay.
Yeah.
You stop.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, if you're like a CFO and you live your entire life in spreadsheets and accounting and that like that, when somebody says, "Hey, what is our response to a cyber attack?" It's hard enough for us guys and girls that live in that world. So I can imagine to them, it's just a big ask to go there.
For sure. And so when you think about the complexity and you want to make it perfect right off the bat, as A and B of that first objection or whatever you want to call it, you start to think of, you don't have to make it perfect right away. You want to you start somewhere and you build on that. So again, to the complexity piece and really dispelling that, just starting somewhere is key. So,
Right.
Yeah.
What do you, when I talk to customers, especially new to kind of moving to that maturity level, which is, going to an IR plan, a lot of times they mention, well, we're doing enough because the government says we are. In other words, regulation. What do you think about that when you approach customers?
No, that's a great point. And it leads into that second, I think either misunderstanding or conversation piece of, we've got compliance. We're doing what compliance tells us we need to do. And so whether you look at that or insurance or whatever your business drivers are for not making that decision, the one thing I can say there is those are fallen by the wayside by the day. So if you think about from a compliance there, you look at the major frameworks with NIST and Center for Internet Security. Those frameworks are all, if they weren't in their base plan, they're becoming in their base plan as far as an IR plan. Right. So in the checkbox isn't the perfect IR plan. Again, back to the first one, it is an IR plan. It's showing you're thinking about it. That leads into insurance, if that's your business driver. It used to, the questions used to be, do you have a firewall? Well, then it's maturing do you have an EDR? And believe me, do you have an IR plan is on the list now. It's on what used to be a one pager is now a 7 to 10 pager, depending on what carrier it is from an insurance standpoint, cyber insurance standpoint. And you're seeing that it's not only do you have one, it's can you prove it? So
Right.
that's where everything's leading to, not just
Right.
do you have one? Have you thought about it? Can you show us? And
Yeah,
so it's
absolutely.
getting there. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think I've seen the same thing. In fact, our president, Bryce Walker, tells the story about when we first moved into IR and thought we were set. And then I think about something like a quarter later, we were updating it again and
Right.
it was growing again. And then
Right.
we thought we were done. And right after we thought we were done, we were updating it again. So it's a living document, if you will. Would you agree?
Plans are, yeah, absolutely. You have a plan, but you've got to revisit it. It's just like your inventory, your asset inventory. It's ever changing. It's dynamic. So, but you get your first initiation into it is that, diving into it, getting something on paper, and then revisiting it the same way you revisit anything that's important to you.
Right.
You want to make sure, your asset inventory, any of those things, your IR plan is a big deal because I think, at some point you want to be aware of what it's like,
Right.
empathize with what it's like to go through that. And it's chaotic. Having a plan reduces your downtime. It gets your systems back up quicker. It lets people know,
Sure.
kind of getting to what it is. It gets people, the roles rehearsed. It's just aware that I have to do something.
Yeah,
And what those
absolutely.
tasks are in some sort of sequence.
Yeah, unfortunately, those days when the attack happens can be pretty hectic. So having that orchestrated
Unbelievable.
in the least is probably a big first step. Speaking of orchestration, there's lots of team players involved, and obviously, I think what I hear a lot when clients that I've approached to this, when they're first thinking of moving into IR, is like, well, we've got to have a lot of resources, and then we've got to train those resources, which is also a daunting wall. Do you hear that from customers?
100%. Yeah. Resource allocation or just the misunderstanding there, the lack of in-house expertise is, you may not hear it. It could be what somebody's just thinking. And it's, again, taking that first step.
Sure.
Because that, if you think about it, I don't have the resources. Now it's just another milestone to, bring somebody in. And the reality is you've got partners to lean on for that. And so the train up on this, because this is not just an IT problem. I think
Right.
we've
Oh, yeah.
addressed that before. It's a business entire. IR involves the business. It involves decisions from the top. It involves, if you have a contact center, it involves the messaging that goes out, your PR, all of those things. It involves that and predetermined decisions, which sounds daunting. But just like anything, if you just think about it and address it, you've got a starting point. It's not. So what you mentioned, the resource allocation, the lack of expertise or perceived lack of expertise there is not as bad as you think, because we're not asking them to solve an IT problem. We're asking them to give us their subject matter expertise
Sure.
on their business role.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It sounds like, to put it a different way, is that big matzo ball of incident response. If you spread it out amongst the business and see it that way, it becomes less intense of a mountain to climb, because it's not just, hey, Mr. Technical Girl or Mr. Technical Guy or Miss Technical Girl,
Right.
go climb this mountain by yourself.
Right.
Everybody's pulling that rope together because it is a business priority.
100%, right. And it's really dealing with, in an incident, you bring in players, typically, who will help orchestrate that at the incident level, and then we're calling on the plan for those individuals and roles to initiate and engage.
Gotcha.
So,
True
yeah.
team effort.
Absolutely.
So the big one, right, with everything we do, and usually the number one reason that customers haven't gone that way and to instill an IR plan is usually cost. What are your
Right.
thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's one of those hidden things as well. And I think it's funny you mention that, because when you start to bring up all those things that we talked about,
Right.
there's some sort of cost, direct or indirect, that associates to those. And the reality is, perception to reality is, we at ComSol, we offer really a variety, 3 different ways to plans for IR.
Okay.
One is just a base IR plan that has some really neat components. It's a SaaS-based application, comes with the consulting hours, 10 hours of consulting hours, gets you to a base plan, and some of that's already baked in. We take our experience and bring that experience to the table, and as well as the platform, and hand that off for $5,000.
$5,000.
So really, it's when you think about what you're getting there, the $5,000 is, I think you can spend that on, as you mentioned, paper, depending on the company. So
Sure.
It gets you a plan, it checks the box for your insurance or compliance, and gets you going. So that's one. We also have a managed service offering as well. So that's its own subscription there. And it's a great plan. It comes with all the other things that our managed service and NetWatch has to offer. And then of course it's the runtime. If you don't have if you're in the middle of an event, we can initiate the plan. That's a little bit different cost there, but it's something that we do offer. It's better to get ahead of it. $5,000 is
Sure.
our offering, and we'll give you that 10 hours of consulting plus all the expertise that comes in initially with that. So
Yeah, and one thing you bring up a good point with it's good to be ahead of it. It's also good to be ahead of it, I think, more and more because of the need for cyber insurance. In other words, I think you mentioned this last week when we were in a meeting that more and more cyber insurance policies are requiring to have an IR plan. Have you seen that more and more?
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's, again, do you have an IR plan? Then the next, it makes sense seeing how complex the requirements are, the guidelines are for cyber insurance. It stands to reason that show us your IR plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you want to be able to show it anyway if you get into the event. But absolutely, having the cyber insurance IR plan as something you can prove to cyber insurance it's absolutely great.
Yeah, those two things I think more and more, and I think the numbers are getting better. There's still a large amount of organizations statistically that aren't doing IR and aren't doing cyber insurance. But I think it was Dmitry Alperovich or John Chambers who said, it's not a question of if but when, right? There's 2 types of companies. Those that have been breached and don't know that, those that don't know they've been breached, right? And so I think as we move through that spectrum of growth in understanding the business benefits as well as the dangers the internet brings, more and more companies are getting that and clicking on that and then moving to IR. And so just to review, David, cost, resource allocation, the complexity are usually things we hear, but at Computer Solutions, we can really get after that with our offerings, right? The upfront offering, the $5,000 price tag that kind of gets you in the door and gets you a start on an IR plan. And it's really robust. I know we've got a lot of clients that are leveraging it today. There's also a version that's part of our NetWatch offering. You saw Ken last week on our NetWatch conversation, but you get it as part of the subscription to have with your managed service. And then of course the on-demand service that if you get something happens, a boom happens, we can come in and drop down like the SWAT team and help you with that. So did I miss anything, David? Anything else you wanted to mention?
Great wrap up. Yeah,
awesome.
Fantastic.
Well, cool. Well, thanks so much for making some time, David. I appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, obviously you can reach out or put some comments down below. We really appreciate you taking time today. Talk to you soon.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching the video. If you or anyone you know is actually looking to purchase an IR plan, build one with our company, or just in general discover any gaps in your security, please contact us through the information on the screen or in the description below, and we'd be happy to help you. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.